Sanibonani babukeli, sesifikile thina nohlelo Yilungelo Lakho. It's your right mbukeli, siza kuwe bukhoma la kumahamba phambili phela SABC 1 eMzansi for sure. Mina ke ngo-Alisha inkosazane yakwaJali. Mbukeli njengenjalo ngokuhamba kohlelo uyaza sikuvalele ngaphandle, sizokupha phela nawe ithuba lokuthi ubambe iqhaza kwinkulumo yethu yanamhlanje. Ungasithola ocingweni ku-011 714 6919 noma uzame ku-011 714 6919. Ungasithumela futhi email ku consumer@sabc.co.za. usilandele ku Twitter na ku Facebook. Siqhubeke ngohlelo lanamhlanje mbukeli. The Consumer Protection Act brought some hope for consumers since it was passed 3 years ago, but some of its sections have not yet become a reality in the lives of consumers who are still battling to understand it. Now today we examine two sections of the legislation, the one dealing with the rights of consumers to return damaged or substandard goods for a replacement or full refund. The other one is of course on contracts. Let's first take a look at this background insert.
Ngesikhathi isungulwa The Consumer Protection Act ngonyaka ka-2011 yathembisa ukubhekisisa amalungelo abathengi, kakhulukazi ekutheni abathengi basayinde ama-contract abhalwe ngendlela elula futhi abayiqondayo. Lo mgomo wathembisa futhi ukuthi ama-contract azobhalwa ngolimi abalaziyo abathengi, kodwa kuze kube manje kusayiphupho leli kubathengi njengoba iseminingi imigomo engakabacaceli kahle. Eminye yemibandela kuma-contract isenzima ukuthi bayiqonde abathengi futhi isabhalwe ngolimi lwesiNgisi. Abathengi abaningi akaze behlangane nama-contract abhalwe ngolimi abalwaziyo njengoba umthetho usho. The Consumer Protection Act ithembisa ukuthi abathengi bangakwazi ukuphuma kuma-contract uma besengawadingi. Izinkampani azijwayele ukuthi zibatshele abathengi ngalamalungelo. Kwezinye izikhathi abathengi bayagetshenga ukutheni besayinde ama-contract abangeke besakwazi ukuphuma kuwo, kanti imigomo nemibandela isuke ingachazelwanga kahle kubathengi. Isikhathi esiningi kusuke kuwama-contract asemajimini noma awama-holiday club schemes. Abathengi basuke bengatshelwanga ukuthi bangakwazi ukuphuma kwi-contract ngaphambi kokuthi basayinde, kanti uma sebefuna ukuphuma kumele bekhokhe eningi imali le. Kodwa akuwona wodwa umgomo lo The Consumer Protection Act elule khona isandla. Umgomo la ikhuluma khona ngokubuyisela kwempahla umthengi ayithengile uma ingasamgcwelisi kusayenye inkinga esadinga ukubhekwa ngamehlo okhozi. Njengoba phela kuphume ephepheni laleli sonto indaba yosomabhizinisi waKwaZulu-Natal lapho ethenge khona imoto ngo-1.4 million yamarandi yaseke imnika izinkinga emva kwezinyanga eziyithupha nje vo ayithengile. Akawazanga ukubuyisela emuva ngoba umdayisi wathi unelungelo lokuthi ayilungise, hayi ukuthi amnike enye noma amnike imali yakhe. Lokhu ke kudale imibuzo yokuthi izinto ezifana nezindlu kanye nezimpahla ezibiza kakhulu nazo ziwela ngaphansi kwaleli phiko. Njengoba kubalekile ukucaciswa kwama-contract kanye nemigomo yokubuyisela kwezimpahla emuva, iseminingi imigomo abathengi abasamele beyiqonde kwi-The Consumer Protection Act. Kodwa ngaphambi kwalokhu abathengi basazoba nenkinga njengoba abathengisi abaningi bengafuni ukuyilandela le migomo. Unompumelelo Mthethwa, Yilungelo Lakho, eGoli.
Sibonge kakhulu ngalo mbiko esiwudidiyelwe iproducer yethu uNompumelelo Mthetho. Mbukeli, ukusazisa kabanzi ngodaba lethu lanamhlanje olumayelana ne-Consumer Protection Act phecelezi i-CPA. Asamukele phela izivakashi zethu la estudio sinaye uSis Omaramaru ophethe izikhalazo zabathengi kwi-Consumer Goods Council. Sibe naye futhi uSis Precious Ncayana yena ophuma kwinhlanganiso elwela amalungelo abathengi, the Consumer Fair. We'd also like to extend a very warm welcome to Rihanna Stein yena ovele obviously like credit ombudsman. Ladies, thank you so much for your time this afternoon and thank you for joining us on the show. Let's start with you, Sis Oma. The current CPA, what does it stipulate?
Consumer Protection Act based on today, like the returns and of goods.
Contracts in
okay.
Yes.
Consumer Protection Act in terms of the contract, the contract has to be in a simple language that the intended audience will understand. Yes. And how the simple language we we're referring to contract iskabali Latin terms, you know, that only lawyers and advocates will understand, or judges. But we want an average person who is not that much educated, who understand. That is when we are saying it has to be simple.
Okay. Mara, speaking of simple, I'm yet to see a contract that has been written in Vernac. Have you ever seen one?
Okay, Alicia, if I may just CPA, Consumer Protection Act, specifically, contract ibeka puo like South African 11 official language.
Yes.
Good, highly simple and understandable to the next person. Good, you look at your audience. If you are a manufacturer or you are a supplier, you look at your audience and then you make your contract relevant so that they can understand. Only National Credit Act stipulates at least a contract is actually in 2 languages. That means it's English or another language, one South African language. But CPA more iba silent in terms of the Vernac. The contract has to be understandable to the person that you are intending to make business with.
All right. Rihanna, if you can just explain to us, how does the credit ombud then fit into this contract as well?
Well, of course, many contracts, start off with credit agreements, and that is where the credit ombudsman comes in, because we're a dispute resolution body. What we do is we have a whole team of lawyers and other staff who take consumer complaints, and we try and assist the consumers to resolve the complaints, and we do this free of charge. So it's a credit-related dispute or a credit bureau-related dispute. I mean, and as you know, many people have complaints about credit bureau information and listings.
Absolutely.
So a lot of the contracts that Omar will deal with under the CPA started off as a credit agreement. But you also have contracts that she will deal with that wasn't a credit agreement, it was a straight cash purchase.
Yes.
So we only deal with the credit side. So if it was a credit agreement where you purchased the furniture and on credit, we will look at the credit side, the contract, but then of course if something goes wrong and you don't want to return the goods or it's defective, that is where the CPA steps in.
All right. And then Precious, osichazele wena ngokusebenza kwakho ne-consumer fair nilwela amalungelo abantu. What's your understanding, especially mase kufika kwi-language, because angakayiboni ngempela i-contract esiZulu or esiXhosa?
Mina nawe Alicia siyafana ngoba thina the way si-interpreta ngayo i-act isho ukuthi umama mayahamba eyothatha i-contract kumele akhona ukufunda makuthi uyafunda, and the majority yabantu bakithi abafundile. So angazi ukuthi i-act ithini lapha. So thina ngama consumers i-act ikhona, but sifila ukuthi is protect ikhona laphana, and it's very difficult to enforce it.
So musichazela ke mayelana nokuthi they need to properly, the supplier needs to properly educate the consumer before giving them the goods. Who is enforcing that? Ubani obabhekile ukuthi babachazela these contracts in the simplest of terms?
Okay, Alicia, I think the problem thing more because now we only at the receiving end more than 20 satellites my hand. But CPA, instructor, the supplier, abide by this CPA, by this act, so that draw the contract is the consumers understand that so how do why share the contract act simple terms good. If ever you are giving me this contract, that means your contract is wrong. It's actually even simple in such a way limutu oscience kolong akono understand CPA. However, if arena yona ya C2, maybe supplier a draw ya C2, but the act doesn't say specifically has to be drawn in the Vernac. It has to be formatted. Even a mere person will be able to understand.
But it's language can either be English or any credit regulates.
That is the National Credit Act, not CPA.
Oh,
yes.
okay. So it's not. Okay.
Okay. National Credit Act ibuaka tabatadi koloto.
Okay.
E kena ha ona le di installment sale, le di terms it's about 36 months and all that. CPA e protect a consumer. E bua ka motho o rekang. Whether be o reka cash, whether be o rekile ka sekoloto, dintho da ska tsa mahantle you fall back mo rona. Wa bona. So hona le National Credit Act and then hona le CPA e passing ka 2011 ka 1st April.
We'll get deeper into that. Now, Rihanna, you've just heard, she says in terms of language, it's either the English or the other language. Would you then, as a credit ombud office, take up a case where there's a dispute because the consumer says that they did not properly understand the contract?
Yes, we will definitely do that.
How would that process go about?
Well, I mean, for example, we've recently had a case where the consumer said it was a telephonic contract. They offered him a contract telephonically, and he didn't understand. He wanted one language, and they spoke, I think, in English. He wanted something else, and he didn't understand. Then we, of course, listened to the recording. We asked for the recording. We listened to it, and from the recording, it turned out in this case that the consumer did understand, because he was happily conversing with the person on the other side, answering his questions, asking questions. So we could hear that he did understand. Every time when he answered, yes, I agree to this, it certainly seemed as if he understood the language. However, if a consumer enters into a contract that he doesn't understand, whether it's because of language or because of some other, it's too complicated, the terms, I mean, there's provision in the National Credit Act that that's an unlawful agreement.
Absolutely.
So yes, we will take it on as a complaint and we will investigate it, see that it's really true that the consumer didn't understand. If he does not understand what he signed, then there are all sorts of remedies that we can assist him with.
All right, and we'll get back to those remedies immediately after this break. Mbukeli asithi kuyibamba lapho indaba. Khumbula ungasishayela ucingo la e-studio ku 011 714 6819 noma 714 6919. Our email address is, of course, consumer@sabc.co.za. Siyabuya khona manje. Welcome back Mbukeli, usabheke uhlelo Yilungelo Lakho. Namhlanje ke sikhuluma ngomthetho ovikela amalungelo enu bathengi mayelana nama contracts kanye nokubuyiselwa kwezinto enizithengile nokuthi kahle kahle le CPA inivikela kanjani. Sishayeleni ke ucingo nazi izinombolo zethu will be appearing on your screens. There they are. Ladies, let's go on with our discussion. Rihanna, you touched on a very, very important fact. There will be repercussions if the supplier is found to have violated these terms. Please tell us what would happen in this case.
Okay, now we're back to a credit agreement. So if the consumer does not understand his rights and obligations under a credit agreement, the National Act makes very specific provision for that. They call agreement such as that a reckless credit agreement. So if you then have a reckless credit agreement, there are serious consequences for that credit provider. If you force the consumer to sign this agreement, or not forced, but he entered into agreement he didn't understand
fully, yes.
Then the consumer has to say that he's not willing to continue with the agreement because it was reckless. Because of course if he doesn't say that, nobody will know. If he just continues paying. But maybe some people will, stop at some stage and say, well, I don't actually understand why I'm paying these amounts. If that case is brought to us or to the regulator or even to a court, the court will then set aside that agreement. In other words, the parties will have to give back what they received.
Yes.
With all the monies repaid, interest, everything. And in severe cases, then even the credit provider, the amounts that he should receive may be written off. So I think many credit providers, especially before the Act came into place, they were very careful going forward to say that in future they're going to explain the contract to consumers because they never want to be in this situation where the consumer can say he didn't understand what he's getting himself into. So that is why, you'll find if you buy a car or anything, they'll sit and they'll explain, do you understand you're doing this, you're doing that? That's what they should be doing. They need to explain it to you. That salesperson on the other side of the desk must explain, remember you're going to do this, remember you're signing for that, remember you're going to pay this. That's what they must do.
But Rihanna, in situations where, if I can just take an example, an email that was sent to us, they've purchased an item online through an online store and after 4 months it stopped functioning properly. Who pays for the return of goods? Do I have to pay for the items couriered back to the suppliers or will the supplier have to pay?
Yes, can I just, that of course now is clearly to do with the workings of the goods, whether it is defective, faulty.
Not up to standard.
Yeah, not up to standard, and that is why we've got the CPA. That entire act was written to assist consumers with this
Based
kind
on
of
that.
issue. Yes.
All right, let's take our first caller on the line. Nkosana from Sibokeng, sakwamukela ohlelweni.
Yebo ma, njani?
Siyaphila bhuti wami, sicela usibuze umbuzo nombeka umbono.
Yebo ma, actually sijoyine into le ama holidays.
Yebo bhuti, qhubeka.
Yebo. And then sithenge ama-shares lapho. But masithola kahle masingahambi bathi bayawadla lama-shares.
Yebo.
And then basithumele futhi nakuma lawyer wabo bathi bayasibambisa. But legally we are still paying. But asisebenzisa ama-point leso wathengile and sawaluza uma singawasebenzisi. But siwathengile ne-certificate sawo futhi.
Okay.
But basimukisa manje kuma-court asazi ukuthi na ingabe fanele senze njani ngoba sabafonela sabatshela ukuthi no man senibhadala but still isimukisa e-court kanjani and uma singahambi singasebenzisa ama-point lawo bathi siyawaluza but certificate ukuthi siyathengile wethu for a period of 5 years.
Okay, siyabonga baba uNkosana, sicela ulalele kumabonakude wakho ne. Let's start there, Sis Oma, very, very big problem with holiday schemes. Please address the gentleman.
Okay, Alicia, from point ya CPA ne, the total these are the holiday points ya di cover. Haibe ukena more contracting ejualo then the credit on bad because I can only agreement.
Yes.
But in terms of CPA, iri more the loyalty points or the holiday clubs, usansuri whatever you are promising consumer by Peter Hart.
Okay.
Actually, the consumer will tell them what by expecting out of those points or those holiday points. So it has to meet that consumer ibatlang. But if now, like kibi mami sintate, ncheba ibuang asinto by discussing initially libona. So that case it has to come to us. So get the advice and that gore ari phonele manambering tlhagelang mo screening gore re tlo gone handle case ya.
Okay. Listen, Precious, abantu are often lured into these contracts ngendlela abangayazi. Wena ufila kanjani ulwela amalungelo abathengi?
I mean kuyiqiniso sonke masithenga you trust umuntu lo okudayisela i-contract ukuthi lento oyithengayo i-right even though kune-consumer education ethi ifunda yonke into. Sometimes into uma understand kahle yabona uyayithatha then as you go into it deeper then that's when you realize ukuthi oh I wasn't aware of that, oh I thought I understood it this way, meanwhile it's actually this way. So this is where then the act came into place, but so far it hasn't done much to protect consumers because we are still dealing with the same issues.
I see, understand futhi. Okay, ithi ngithatha uKaifasi from eLimpopo, but Kaifasi awamukela ohlelweni. But Kaifasi
Njani sezomkhulu?
siyaphila bhuti wami, sicela usibuze umbuzo noma ubeke umbono.
Ya, ufuna ukubuza kancane.
Qhubeka bhuti Kaifasi.
Ngeke ngathenga imoto lapha kwelinye igarage la eMpumalanga ne. Hello?
Yebo bhuti Kaifasi, qhubeka silalela.
Ya, ngeke ngathenga imoto la kwelinye igarage la eMpumalanga kusukela ngo-October last year. Manje ngoJuly yaqala yaba ne-problem.
Okay.
Manje ngababiza labasegarage ukuthi mabeze bazobheka imoto yabo ayisafuni ukusebenza.
Yebo baba.
Bayithethe ke bahlala nayo kusuka July, August, September until manje banayo abakhona ukuyilungisa eneseseyishayene ngeyibhadala mina. Manje bangiforced ukuthi ikhona enye imoto kodwa ayifani nale moto ngihamba ngayo bathi ngithathe yona ngisebenzise yona.
Okay.
Okanye ngithathe yona kube imoto yami permanent. Manje angifuni. Manje bathi into engcono kungcono bangifunele imoto nje noma ngenjani ngithathe yona ngiqhubeke ngibhadala. Manje ukuthi mhlambe ngiyangibonisa akukho la mina ngilahlekelwa khona ngoba sengibhadale ngabona manje 3 months. Yena ngihambe ngayo le moto.
Okay baba uKaifasi, sicela ulalele lapho kumabone kude wakho emva kwe-break sizokuthathela sizokupha impendulo embuzweni wakho. Ake siphinde sithi shwi ey'mbukeli ey'tolo imbukeli hlangana nathi emva kwalokho. Welcome back Mbukeli. Uyazi ukubeka umbono noma ubuze umbuzo ungasithinta ngocingo la e-studio noma usi-email noma usole ku Facebook na ku Twitter. We are still on the issue of how the Consumer Protection Act is there to protect amalungelo enu njengabathengi, kodwa namhlanje sibhekene nezomthetho wama contracts kanti nokubuyiselwa emuva kwezinto uzithengile. Sesixoxile kabanzi ke ngama contracts, sesiqhubekela phambili ngokuthi when you returning goods. Sis Oma ngicela uaddress ubaba uKhayifasi njengaphambi ukuthi siye phambili.
Okay, nthwengamlelang yona kore issue ya high relatedly motor industry ombud. So aka thinta bona or athinte rona mo nomoro ngetlhagelang mo screening rona tla allocate a case ya high accordingly. Nthwengwe ke ratang go itlhagisa mo bareki kore ha o rekile ntho, ha o rekile product ka sekoloto, huba in some instances huba li supplier, huba li finance provider. So tshwanetse re understand into those two. So if ever o ile wa ba le bothata le ntho o e rekileng, a wa tshwanela gore o deprive the finance provider of payment because li bona ba ka nka di steps. So ba reke ke kopo le tlhokomele ntho eo gore ha o rekile ntho e sa o thabisi dila li supplier. But on the other hand, you continue paying as per your agreement, your finance. Yes.
All right, let's take Lydia from Davidson. Lydia, welcome to the show. What's your question or comment?
My question about pension.
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
I worked for a magistrate court from 18 to 93, and I never received my pension, but I'm getting my monthly pension.
Okay. Okay, Masiyabonga, please listen on your television. All right, I don't think it is the topic for today. Miss Lydia, we will definitely be looking into that subject. Do send us an email to consumer@sabc.co.za. Precious, what kind of cases do you deal with in your everyday life, especially regarding ama complaints la esiqeda ukukhuluma ngawo nosis Om?
Oh, it's everything. I mean, abantu uya estolo ayothenga igrocery ama ebuya abuye into, or like one example, it's a small example. They bought dried fruits. I think they were peaches. They ate them. As they were eating them, they found a worm inside. And then I think soon thereafter, then they got sick, they got ill. Then they went to the doctor, and then the doctor confirmed that the illness that they had, it could be, it's very related to what they ate before they had gastro, like babi hlanza, kishwa isisu and things like that. So then when you go consult, you pay money.
So it's never such a small thing. You can follow up on every little thing that you come across in terms of goods that you buy.
Yeah, and then the interesting part, because when you go see the doctor, you pay money, then you get medication, you pay. So then they went back to the shop to say, okay, here's our receipt, and this is the products that we bought, and we've been ill since then, you know. So we want our money we paid to go to the doctor and for the medication, and then they were not prepared to refund them the money for the doctor and the medication. They were only prepared to refund them the amount for the fruit, and which is like so wrong.
All right, let's take another caller. Sis Florence ethembisa sokwamukela ohlelweni.
Yebo sisi, mina nginenkinga ngingathatha iyoboleka imali le.
Yebo sisi.
Bathi akwazi ukuthatha imali bengizathatha manje esitolo. Ngathi njengoba ngangifuna 2000 rand bathi mangithatha.
Sis Florence? Oh, that line is unfortunately very bad. Sis Florence still phinde uzame ukushayela la e-studio. Okay, let's move on to ukuphendula ubuyiswa kwezinto damaged goods or is a substandard. Sis Oma, ithini CPA regarding this?
Okay, i-Consumer Protection Act ngendaba yokubuyisa ama goods awathengile. Ithi anything oyirekileng, ne? And then ayetsi ntho yetse iditswe gore yetse yona ayibereke msebetsi how ireka it was intended for.
Yes.
Then you've got 6 months to return it. And when you return it go supplier, it's up to you whether you want a full refund or it to be repaid or dictator from the supplier within that 6 months.
Okay.
And then it goes to an extent to say after that 6 months, maybe they've repaired it, and then you experience another defect, then you've got an extended 3 months to go back to your supplier
Yeah.
gore a tlo kgona ho thusa ka ntho eo.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
still within the act.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So i-consumer iyakhuseleka kahle kahle. Okay, asithatha uZanele ePiet Retief. Sizanele sakwamukela ohlelweni.
Hello Alisha njani?
Siyaphila sisiwami, sicela usibuze umbuzo nombeka umbono.
Yes. Uyazi nginenkinga la umama kusho ukuthi kunosisi wami omdala ne.
Yebo.
Wathatha impahla eLewis Furnitures. And then uma ethatha le impahla ngeaccount kaMama. Ikusho ukuthi isegameni kaMama. Then usisi wami ngebhadi wayikhokhela yonke account all the time. Wangebhadi washona last year. Mayeshona izinto zesegameni likaMama zithathwe nguye. uLewis ufuna imali kuMama. UMama akasebenzi indawo, akakazi wasebenza.
Yebo sisi.
And namhlanje sisalwa leyo mpi leyo.
Okay.
uLewis bangifonele bathi bafuna leyo mali. Ngaya ngakhuluma ne-area manager yakhona. Yakhuluma okay ngakusasa ngaya the day before, then the following day wangifonela ekseni wangitshela ukuthi uzoyiclaim i-account. But then unfortunately emva kwesikhathi futhi baphinde bangifonela bathi bafuna imali. Ngababuza ukuthi kanjani ngoba i-area manager ithi izoyiqeda i-account.
Yebo.
Ngaphinde ngamfonela futhi yena wathi akazange akusho lokho. So now I'm just in the middle, angazi ngenze njani.
Oh, siyabonga sizanele, sicela ulalele lapho kumabona kude wakhe impendulo ne?
Okay.
If you can just quickly address this is almost so.
Haebe ke motle hantle mama o tlhokofetse ke yona rekile ko Lewis.
No, usisi obesebenzisa i-account kaMama uyena oshonile, so manje iLewis ifuna imali kuMama because i-account ibhalwe ngegama likaMama and uMama akasebenzi.
Yeah, wabona it's a bit of a challenge more because mama uteng and she's the account holder.
Yes.
Wayibona treasure. But ke tla advisor o se gore a re thinte ko officing ya rona then re tla handle case ya hae.
All
Yes.
right. Is there anything you want to add there, Reina? She actually used somebody's account number. The sister to the lady that called us used her mother's account to go and actually obtain goods from a furniture shop. And then when the sister died, the furniture shop is still asking for money from the mother, who's the initial account holder, but now the mother doesn't work. All right. Before you respond, let's take a very, very quick ad break. Please remember our numbers are 011-714-6819, number 714-6919. Email yethu consumer@sabc.co.za. Siyabuya khona manje. Siphinde sikwamukele ohlelweni. Uma ngabe uqeda ukufika engabe kade ukuphi mbukeli, sixoxa ngomthetho ovikela amalungelo abathengi, i-Consumer Protection Act. Izivakashi zami la e-studio, we have the experts kule ndaba. I'm talking about Usis Omaramaru from the Consumer Goods Council. Yena ubhekene ngqo nezikhalazi zabathengi. Sibe naye futhi uPrecious Ncayana ophuma kwenhlanganiso the Consumer Fair. Siphinde futhi sibe naye uMsriana Stein. She is the Deputy Credit Ombud. Sishayele ucingo, usithumele email. We'd love to hear your views. Asithathe ikhola yethu Mziwekhaya eCape Town. Sakwamukela ohlelweni. Mziwekhaya ukhona kwilungelo lakho? All right, we seem to have lost Mziwekhaya. All right, ladies, talking about the earlier subject as well. Do you want to address the caller that we took before we went to the ad break? You were actually answering me, Rian.
Just repeat what was the problem again that we were going to
All right,
discuss?
the lady, they used her, she used her mother's account and it
Yes.
wasn't her, and then she later passed on, and the creditors are still looking for the money from the mother who doesn't work. She's a pensioner.
Yes. On that point, I just wanted to mention something, that on the Credit Bureau listings department that we have, we find a lot of people complaining about identity fraud. And that is where somebody else uses your identity to go and open an account, get credit, and then sometimes they pay, sometimes they don't pay. But normally you find out that there's an account that's listed against your name that you have no idea what it's about. And we find that some of these people are even family members.
Yes.
Because they've got access to your ID book and all your details.
And I'm sure she's an old mother, she's
Yes.
a pensioner, so she wasn't going to ask about the details. But
Yes.
according to her, she actually consented to this.
Yes, well, of course, that is not then the credit provider's fault. If the mother says, I've got an account, and she says to her child, you can purchase the furniture on my account, I'm responsible for this, and I know that I've got the account to pay. You know, then you can't afterwards then say to the store, they're at fault. But it does happen that people's identity is stolen, either from family members or strangers, and those people are opening accounts. So the only way to know about this, if you check your records, or if one day you get a strange call from somebody you've had no dealings with, don't ignore it. Ask them, you know, what is going on here? Because we find people, if they don't ask the questions, there may be a judgment against your name next thing.
Yes, absolutely.
So they have to ask.
They have to ask questions. All right, let's take Stephen on the line. Stephen, sawamukela kwilungelo lakho. Stephen, sawamukela ohlelweni. All right, I think we've lost Stephen again. Sis Omo, if you can just add on to that for us, please. All right, let's take Stephen first. Stephen, are you online with us from Mpumalanga?
That's correct.
Yebo, bhuti wami, sicela uqhubeke ngombuzo noma umbono wakho.
I bought a car from a company in Southern Bank. And what happened, I paid the installment until after paying the final installment, I was told that I have to pay another thing that's called balloon payment, of which it was not stated on my agreement when I first purchased the car, and then I was told that I have to be refinanced again for the balloon payment of 32,000 rand.
Okay. All right.
So in the finance again, I'm busy paying the 32,000 rand, which resulted to an amount of 39,000 rand.
Okay. Stephen, please listen on your television set. Sis Oma, did you get uthi applyele imoto wabamnikeza a certain contract, and then uthi bamthola ukuthi he's also liable for the balloon payment, which amounted to about 38,000 rand, and now he's still paying that amount, but it's also amounted, it keeps on getting bigger. So if you can just explain how the balloon payment works as well. Or maybe charges, yes,
maybe
please,
I can just jump in there. You know, we find that a lot of consumers, especially with car payments, they don't understand this balloon payment because they look at the monthly repayment. You know, you see the cars driving around and it says this car is only $4.99 per month. So that's all they look at, and they don't know and they don't care that at the end of 3 years or 4 years, they're still going to owe 100,000 or 80,000, or in this case 38,000. So what they do is they lower the installment per month so that people can afford the monthly installment. But because they lower the installment, at the end of the period, there's still a big amount outstanding that you still have to pay. So either you're then going to have to refinance the car, or you're going to have to sell the car to pay off that amount, but it is an amount that you owe, because you didn't pay it off over the period. If you had a bigger installment, it would have been done by now. So having this balloon payment is not necessarily a good thing. So if you owe the money and say it's 38,000 rand and you pay little bits a month, what's going to happen? The interest is going to run. And every month it's going to maybe get bigger and bigger, but not because they're doing anything wrong, it's because you're paying a small amount.
Rihanna, I'm sorry, I have to cut you there for now. You can explain to us further when we come back. Mbugeli, asithathe ikhefu lokugcina, please don't go away. Welcome back, Mbugeli, to our final segment. Thatha ipeni nephepha khona phela uzokwazi ukubhala imininingwane yezivakashi zethu ukuze usizeke Mbugeli ungabhaleli ilungelo uma izivakashi zethu sezihambile. Ladies, Rihanna, if you can just quickly address the gentleman who called, what does he then have to do now?
Okay, well, I think if he has a concern about the amount, because that's the kind of problem we see all the time. People say, I've got a credit agreement, but the amount that I have to pay on this statement, it doesn't look right. The interest doesn't look right. And then we will investigate it. We'll calculate it for you.
It's clearly a misunderstanding on the dealer's part
we'll look
in
at the
explaining to him
contract,
what the balloon payments are.
We'll look at the statement, we'll calculate the interest. So that is what we do on a regular basis. So he can complain to us, and then we can just check that the amounts that he owes is actually correct, or if there's something wrong, we'll help him.
All right. Ingamenzelani CPA wena sis Oma?
Njengoba uRihanna seke explainile, into singayenza singayithatha, but like my involve imoto industry
Imoto
ombat,
industry,
but
okay.
singamsiza ukuthi simdirect kuleyo channel.
Okay,
Yes.
so anganithinta nani
Yes,
athinte
definitely.
Orion.
Yes.
Okay, asithathe uShirley eGauteng. Shirley, welcome to the show. What's your question or comment?
Mama, mina ngibhatele imoto manje.
Yebo.
So ngathola exchange sengibhatele 4 years. Manje emsebenzini abambhatala imali manje ufuna ukuzwa ukuthi ngenzeni kanti ayikho imali engena nothing.
Oh, okay. Waba ku-accident awusakhoni manje ukuthi ukhokhele imoto bhuti? Oh, okay. Imoto isekuwena?
Ibu.
Okay, manje lama installment obuwakhokho kwamanje bekhokhelwa kanjani?
Le nyanga ngithole imali ayibhatala ngibona ukuthi le nyanga ngiyazi ngenzeni.
Oh, okay. All right, siyabonga bhuti. Can anybody help there? He was in a car accident and he can't make payments on his car installments because I think he got into a serious accident, so he can't get to work. Is there anything how can he be helped?
Well, I think if the first thing is he must immediately contact his credit provider and try and make an arrangement with them. Hopefully they will be sympathetic and they will hold over any legal action, until maybe there's a period that they give him grace. But if he doesn't contact them and they just see there's no payment, they'll hand it over to attorneys because they'll think this consumer has just stopped paying. So he must contact them, he must explain his circumstances, he will maybe have to prove that he was really, off ill and, in the accident. And then they will have to come to an arrangement, say, well, maybe for a certain month, a couple of months, they will give him grace. So he will have to contact them and ask.
Okay. So Omar, a gentleman in Durban, a businessman, this was a very big story, bought a car for 1.4 million rand. After 6 months, there was things faulty with the steering wheel. When you tried to return it back to the dealership, they did not. They actually fixed the problem over and over and over. So this car is just depreciating value by the minute. What would his right or his consumer right be according to the CPA?
Okay, like abua earlier, Alicia, where into product rekile or isa uberekile within 6 months, you have the right to go back to your supplier and say, this is not happening, there's this defect, it's not meeting the requirements that it's made for. So it's either you refund me or you give me a new one or you repay. So it's up to you as a consumer.
Okay, shuthi wayikhethela the repair option yena without knowing.
Because kune cases sebenza nayo officeini nayo bekwe imoto. Must follow up nama supplier. The consumer chose to settle for that. So it becomes a bit difficult. But we are saying, Kobareki, you've got the right. Within 6 months, you've got the right to tell the supplier what you want. It's either a full refund, a repair, or
okay. All right. Asithathe our last, very, very last caller, Sis Thembi eGauteng. Sis Thembi, siyakwamukela kwilungelo lakho. Sis Thembi? Okay, I think she's gone. Awuchaze Precious.
No, sometimes they available. Marmayu supply ayifuna ukunikeza into entsha. It's not their first preference. It works against them to give you something brand new. So they would suggest that you go for a repair and then repair and after repair. When you say, no, I don't want this, they make it difficult. It's not as easy as a consumer to say, I'm going to get something brand new.
Hence, really, CPA, if ever the supplier will karabo eleng gore wena au happy kayona, then you come to us.
So Omar, which kind of goods lazy is khuluma ngazo, and especially moto, because we've had a lot of cases there. Iziphi moto lezi ezingabuyisela?
Anything, Alicia. Anything. As long as ukeni cost shop ongwayireka.
What about izindlu? Because now it falls under goods, a house. Would you be able to, if it has plumbing problems or electricity is not properly fitted, what would you then do in that situation?
Functioning right, yes. Yeah. For now, I wouldn't know how we work and but I functioning the contracts or designing separately in terms of your plumbing, your electricity. So time period, if it's within this time period, you still have the right to claim freely.
Thank you, ladies. In your closing statements, unfortunately, we've run out of time. Brianna.
Maybe I can just quickly say that this maybe sounds very confusing for the consumers. They don't know where to complain.
Yes.
But we all have very, very professional, well-trained call center. So if they phone our call center, the call center angel will quickly hear that, no, this is a complaint that must go to OMA.
Oh, okay.
Or to the motor ombudsman. So they must just find somebody's number. The same if they phone OMA and she hears, no, it's a credit ombud complaint. So we will help the consumers, whatever the story is.
Okay.
We know how to assist them. They must just phone.
All right. Well, thank you very much, ladies. Well, that's where we have to leave it namhlanje. Mbukeli, asithathe leli thuba sibonge izivakashi zethu ngolwazi nesikhathi sabo kanti ngiphinde futhi ngibonge nani babukeli ngokuthi nibe nathi kuze kube manje. Ubone impinda zohlelo lethu hlanganani lathi la njalo ngomsombuluko ngo9:30 kuya ku10:30 khona la ku SABC 1 eMzansi for show. You can also watch us on Facebook and YouTube. Please join us again next week for another live consumer topic of the week with my co-presenter Usisanda Jonas. For myself, for Alicia Nkosazana Nyagajali and the entire team, nisale kahle.
Yilungelo Lakho.